My name is Steve Appel from Work Comp Matters. This week on the show, we talk about George Herbert Walker Bush. We also talk about self-driving cars and all the other news of the week. And last but not least, I talk about my lunch date with President and CEO of Work Comp Matters, Kristen Chavez. Thanks for tuning in, and now here's the show.
In 4, 3, 2, 1, roll in.
From the roundtable at legendary Uncle Studios, welcome to another edition of Work Comp Matters, the central location for you employees, you employers, and of course, you independent contractors. My name is Steve Appel, and I'll be your host for the next hour with some talk, some news, and hopefully some answers about Work Comp Matters. Thanks for being part of the show, and if you can break away from your Work Comp Matters, feel free to give us a call and clue us in with your questions, comments, and or concerns. The phone number worldwide, 818-357-4120. You can send me an email to wcexaminer@aol.com. You can even be old school. Send me a fax, 818-475-1437. With me in studio, my right-hand man, Dr. Michael Zima, attorney Robert Ozeron, Scott Walton of Uncle Studios is on the board. Back in Munich, Germany, is John Scalia. And back at Work Comp Central, making sure the whole damn thing goes right, is Kristen Chavez. Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Work Comp Matters. I think something of Robert's, your iPhone just fell on the floor? I mentioned Kristen Chavez, and his iPhone falls off his lap onto the floor. How about that? You know what I'm saying? Yes, folks, that's right. I did have lunch with Kristen Chavez last week. I mentioned on the show 2 weeks, Robert's phone really did fall on the floor when I mentioned Kristen Chavez. I mentioned 2 weeks ago that Work Comp Central had decided not to renew the contract. And then last week I mentioned, no sooner did I mention that, than I get a call from a representative of Work Comp Central saying it might not be final. And folks, I can announce now it was Kristen Chavez. And I did announce that I said, hey, if there's anything I can do, whatever I can do, let me take you out to lunch. Let's talk about it. I will make you a deal. We can't refuse. And I'm going to talk about what happened at that lunch in the second half of the show. Additionally, I am so pleased to announce I've been wanting to get him on the show all year, and finally next week, applicant attorney extraordinaire, attorney Michael Burgess will be live in studio at the roundtable at Uncle Studio next week. That will be fantastic. You don't want to miss that. And additionally, coming up, hopefully, and I think I'll have an interview with her in a couple of weeks. She was on the show earlier in the year, Ms. Geraldine Lee, applicant attorney who represents a majority of the workers who were injured and or killed in the San Bernardino terrorist shooting back at the end of December 2015. Tonight's show, of course, is on George Herbert Walker Bush, and Mike's going to have that first story in just a little bit. But the first story that I wanted to talk about is a story that was on Work Comp Central this week. Yes, that's right. After having lunch with Ms. Kristen Chavez, one of the things that we did was just ever so slightly, ever so small, we pierced that Chinese wall. And I did not intend that to rhyme. California applicant attorney representing a dozen San Bernardino County workers who are injured in a terrorist attack during the holiday party at the Inland Regional Center 3 years ago, so the majority of her clients have or will take medical retirement. Geraldine Lee told the San Bernardino Sun that many of her clients have been unable to return to work after the December 2015 shooting that killed 14 another 22 county workers who gathered at the Inland Regional Center that day were shot, and others are dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder. They attempted to go back to work, but psychologically, they just could not do it. Lee said her clients are absolutely trying to return to work, but unfortunately, the memories of what happened at that time and their deceased friends are with them constantly. And a spokesman for San Bernardino County told The Sun that 42 of the 57 survivors of the 2015 terrorist attack had returned to work at some point. As of late November 14th of this year, some were working full-time, and I am just so glad that Geraldine Lee, I called her up. She's going to do an interview with me, and if you want to hear that whole story on WorkComp Central, you can get that news story by signing on to WorkComp Central. If you want to subscribe to WorkComp Central, it's one of the best deals possible out there. And also, if you have anything that you want to say positively, negatively about this story, or even WorkComp Matters, please feel free to give me a call at 818-357-4120. You can send me a fax, 818-475-1437. You could send me an email to wcexaminer@aol.com. If you like the story, you don't like the story, you like WorkComp Matters, you don't like WorkComp Matters, we will listen to all criticism, good, bad, indifferent, whatever it is. Tonight, we have stories. Of course, Mike will be coming up shortly with information on President George Bush. We've got scooters bursting into flames. I guess those are the shared scooters. I think I saw one today. There's another salmonella outbreak in ground beef. Wildfires push insurers into insolvency. PG&E in the news again. Apparently, they decided not to turn off the power. Massive cyber breach, of course, at the Marriott. I think about 500,000 people, their stuff was broken into. We've got self-driving taxis. We've got a new CFO at AIG, and a whole bunch of more news stories for you employees, you employers. And, of course, we haven't forgotten about you damn independent contractors. My name is Steve Appel. You're listening to WorkComp Matters. We're brought to you by A1 Law. If you want the #1 computer management system used by more workers' compensation attorneys than any other system in the damn Kuiper Belt, give me a call at 818-357-4120 for your no-strings-attached money-back guarantee. $1 a day. A1 Law. And, of course, you want those hard-to-get sold out, yes, even front row concert, sports, and theater tickets. Give our buddy Brian a call at Santa Monica Tickets, 310-395-8587. And here comes a little something from our friends at ABC Rugs. ABC Rugs has been in the business of manufacturing and direct importation and exportation of Persian and Oriental rugs for more than 39 years. ABC Rugs is a direct importer and wholesaler of antique, Moroccan, Oriental, and Persian rugs. Established in 1978, ABC Rugs is definitely old school. 323-897-5444. That's ABC Rugs. 323-897-5444. And there goes ABC Rugs. Well, of course, today was the final funeral, or I shouldn't say final funeral, the funeral for George H.W. Bush. He's probably on his body is on a train right now heading to Texas, where he will be buried with his family. And just a little something about George Bush. Absolutely love the Sox. Absolutely remember read my lips, no more taxes, when subsequent to that he had to raise taxes. And just the fact that he was remembered as being a very respectful gentleman. Even
He's
though
a humble guy.
Yeah, even though he was on, I would consider him a moderate Republican, a moderate conservative, and did his best to get along with everybody. So without further ado, on George H.W. Bush. He's my right-hand man. He keeps me in check and out of trouble, hopefully at least 90% of the time. With the first news story of the night, Dr. Michael Zima.
Thank you. Funeral services for former President George H.W. Bush took place in Washington on Wednesday. Federal offices were closed in recognition of a national day of mourning. Leaders from around the world and around the country, both sides of the aisle, were present in a rare showing of national unity. Former President George W. Bush broke down at the end of his eulogy. George W. said his dad was the best father a son or daughter could have. The news cycle has been full of stories and anecdotes regarding the former president, who passed away Friday at the age of 94.
And what can I say? I mean, I didn't agree with everything that he stood for, but he was absolutely a respectful guy. He tried to practice bipartisanship whenever possible. And I don't know. What else can I tell you? What else can I say?
And he got along. It was interesting, I thought, that he got along well with people like Dana Carvey, who, made fun of him. He laughed right along with him. It was kind of remarkable. And
he also specifically said at the very end of his life that he wanted Donald Trump invited to his services because that, I believe, was his attempt to be conciliatory because during the election, Donald Trump made some against Jeb, made some pretty low down and dirty remarks against Jeb, and of course he's made some dirty remarks against the Obamas, and I think that
what did he say against Jeb, except that he's low energy?
Well, when he got his mother to come campaign with him, he really hit below the belt. That's what I felt. I don't remember exactly what he said, but it was like, oh, you got to bring mommy along. It was really degrading.
So he was calling him a mama's boy.
Yeah, and essentially a low-energy mama's boy. That would be what Trump said of Jeb in the campaign, the debates and such.
And Jeb disputes that.
Well, he tried to energize, but it didn't work.
Jeb's bilingual. He doesn't show it off, but I was going to say he speaks fluent Spanish.
Yeah. You just say his wife is
Latina.
Latina? She's from Mexico, right?
I don't know. But one thing that I definitely wanted to talk about is the next news story. Scooter sharing company Lime recently relayed troubling messages to its users. A portion of its fleet was at risk of bursting into flames. The startup recalled about 2,000 vehicles, less than 1% of its scooters, following its October 30th warning. The situation brought to mind scenes from 3 years ago of those skateboard-style conveyances known as hoverboards catching fire and promptly failing out of use. Would spontaneous combustibles sink the scooters next? Well, when we hear about it, we'll report to you on Work Comp Matters. Robert, I think I saw one of those scooters today. Have you seen any recently or no?
The scooters? Yeah, I've seen the scooters. I haven't seen any bursting into flames.
No, I haven't seen any either. I saw one going down Van Nuys sidewalk.
Robert, where did you see one?
Well, there was in Santa Monica. There's a lot.
Oh, Santa Monica.
And Sherman Oaks.
There's a few on Ventura Boulevard.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I saw it, but I can't really recall where on Ventura Boulevard. I think it's in Sherman Oaks, like you said, boss.
I was going to say between Van Nuys and like Coldwater or something.
Yeah,
like that
sounds like
right?
a good stretch there. Yeah, it's a good bet. But it's mostly like in Santa Monica, Manhattan Beach, those type of beach communities where you can have the boardwalks and you can kind of travel. I think they're pretty cool, except the fact that you don't have a helmet, right? You don't have any safety equipment.
Aren't you supposed to have a helmet?
Yeah, I think they said they would actually mail it to you for free. They're trying to promote safety. Yeah, I think you might get a free helmet out there is what I heard. But I don't know. Most of the time when you see people using these scooters in those areas, it's late at night and they're drunk, right? And so I think and pretty much you always have a story now about
So
people
they
falling
use them
off
at
those
night.
things.
That you don't see them in the day. You see them at night.
No, you see them in the day as well, but obviously
Okay.
the people aren't intoxicated
Oh, yeah.
riding
No,
around
no,
on those
sure,
things
of
during the
course,
day
yeah.
as much as at night.
Right.
At least I don't see it. But yeah, I've seen it when you go
And-
out in the areas where there's the restaurants in Santa Monica.
And can
stuff.
you still just drop them anywhere you want? They don't have the guardrail. Guardrail is the wrong word.
Like, did you see him laying around?
Sometimes, yes, you see them parked outside of apartment buildings, and just someone went home, I guess, and just left it on the street. I have never used these things, to be honest
Neither
with you.
have I.
I drive. I have a car. And then if I was going to not take my car, I guess I would ride my bicycle because it's exercise, and you can probably get somewhere faster. But there is a convenience about just straight up dropping the thing and walking away.
I think it sounds like a huge convenience. Just I remember the one time that
It's strange, right? To drop something and just leave
I
it.
saw someone walking one today, but I mentioned on the show a couple of weeks ago. All of a sudden, I turned around and one buzzed right by me. It must have been 20 miles an hour, and I go, "Whoa!"
Was the guy wearing a helmet?
No,
That's what I mean.
No,
At least
no.
when you ride your bicycle, you can prepare, right? I don't think that. I don't think it's a good idea to just ride these things like that, unprepared. Preparing yourself, whether it's buckling up in your car or putting a helmet on before you go on your bicycle.
I think there's a city ordinance that they have to wear a helmet.
I'm not sure there is,
It
because
may
I see.
go into effect at the beginning of the year or something.
Okay, well, it seems like it's overdue, but then what? Then you're not having that drop it all feature that you like so much. Now you have to carry a helmet around, right? And that kind of eliminates the convenience, unless you're comfortable wearing some sort of rent-a-helmet that other people wear, and I doubt that's going to be something that people are into. So,
or unless they attach the helmet to the what do you call it? The scooter. Unless they attach
but
to
that's
the
what I
helmet
mean.
to
Who's
the
going to wear
scooter
that? Who's going to
with-
wear that helmet?
with like a thing, a cord or whatever, and then argue if they could make it so the motor wouldn't start unless you're wearing the helmet. Now,
But
how
why
they
would
can
you
do
want to
that-
wear a helmet that someone else just wore?
It's a good way to get lice.
That's disgusting.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point.
And so you're going to want to bring your own helmet, right?
Right.
But doesn't that lose that convenience that you've liked so much?
Well, what about people renting bowling shoes? Isn't it the same thing?
Then you got socks.
No, they first of all,
Oh.
you got your own socks, you got a layer of protection, and they also spray those out.
They spray them. They spray
right?
them.
Don't
Yeah.
you see that? Yeah, they
Yes,
spray it.
yes.
Everyone's seen it happen. So there's a balance here where you want the helmet, you want the safety, but you don't want to be in another guy's equipment. You know, that's kind of weird.
By the way, my boy, I have to mention I like your hoodie tonight.
Oh, thanks. It was cold in the studio here when we got started. It's
Yeah.
dark and it's cold out. I
dark
can't wait
and
till the
it's
days are
cold,
getting
it's
longer.
windy.
It's
you know.
51 degrees. Right?
Yeah. Well, we got
Big check.
the winter equinox coming up, and then the days are going to start to get
I'm gonna
longer, and
say
then it'll
you,
be nice.
You look hot with a hoodie.
Well, I don't know what that means.
That's a matter of opinion.
California regulators moved Friday to take over an insurance company that can't pay out all claims following a massive wildfire that destroyed more than 13,000 homes. State Insurance Commissioner Dave Jones said that Merced Property and Casualty Company was pushed to insolvency by the fire that sparked November 8th and nearly completely destroyed Paradise and surrounding towns. In the days before California's deadliest wildfire erupted, that's the next news story. I'm sorry. So, one insurance company essentially was taken over by the state, and we talked on Work Comp Matters, I believe it was last week, about the road between Paradise and Chico and how it used to be 4 lanes and now it's 2 lanes, and a lot of cars just couldn't, a lot of people could just not get out of town, were stuck on the 2-lane highway, and literally died while their cars melted on the street.
Awful. Hopefully we can look forward to some sort of maintenance of the forests so we can avoid these incidents and these huge fires in the
Here,
future.
here.
Do we have maintenance of these wildland areas?
The company the company is responsible for it. And a lot of times they don't do it. Or a lot of times they make a mistake.
Which
A lot
company?
of times they do something stupid. PG&E.
Well, that's regarding maintenance of the lines and the causing of
Yeah,
the original
they're not
fire.
responsible for maintenance of the forest.
But how about for the maintenance of the forest?
They're responsible for having a clearance from the forest. So they are, in a
They're
sense.
responsible for maintaining their power lines, so when the winds go up to 50, 60 miles an hour, they're not going to tilt or blow over, come into contact
Right.
with the
I think it's
forest
their
and then spark the
responsibility
fire.
to clear it. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but I'm talking about what makes the fire so large after the initial ignition, right?
Well, once again, you had the perfect storm this time. You had like low humidity down to 3.5%, 4%. You had winds blowing at like 50, 60 miles an hour. There hadn't been rain in a while, and the winds, in all probability, again, either bent over or knocked over the power lines. They sparked, they touched off, and they said that this fire burned hotter and burned faster than ever before because of the conditions.
But the reason that the fire spread to the surrounding areas so quickly is because the forest itself was overgrown, correct?
No, I haven't heard that.
It's a
I haven't heard it.
It's a combination of the forest being overgrown, the extremely low humidity, and the high winds.
Because we read an article right here earlier, I think a couple weeks ago, where they were changing the logging restrictions to lower the width of the tree from 36 inches to 24 inches. The diameter, that is.
Right,
I remember
right,
a little.
right.
Right, we read that article here. So I would assume
But I think
that's
that
some
had to
sort
do
of
with federal land, though, right? That had to do with federal land.
That was, I thought that was state, but either way, it had to do with the fires and them trying to combat the overgrowth in the forest, arguably, because we have these restrictive policies in California to protect nature and eliminate logging, and there's a counter effect to that, which is we haven't been maintaining our wildlands.
And arguably, because a lot of it is federal land, like, for example, the land and forest that would be southwest of the San Fernando Valley going all the way down to Malibu and Pacific Coast Highway, that is federal land. Donald Trump came out and said California did an extremely bad job of taking care of that. However, that's federal land, and it's the feds' responsibility.
Well, I think there's a combination of federal and state. There's a lot of open, acreage out there, so I'm sure there's a lot of both, as well as private land and private responsibilities regarding trees and things like that. But still, there's obviously this was a confluence of events, right? Like you just mentioned, and I think the growth of the forest is one of those things that perhaps people haven't really paid much attention to because they feel that more trees is good. And generally, I can agree with that principle.
Well, let me
but
go
you have
with-
to maintain the area.
Let me go with this news story here about PG&E and see what you think.
Go for it.
In the days before California's deadliest wildfire erupted near a PG&E power line during a windstorm, the company kept a close eye on the weather, warned customers it might shut off electricity in the area, and finally decided conditions weren't bad enough to warrant it, according to a report filed Tuesday with state regulators. The report from PG&E also shows that the giant utility company made its final decision not to cut electricity more than 6 hours after the campfire began on November 8th in the Sierra Nevada foothills of Butte County. Pushed by strong winds, the fire leveled the town of Paradise, killing at least 88 people. So there's a human element too, Robert.
Who the hell makes that decision 6 hours the fires start not to cut the friggin' power?
Well, they should have cut it
Who made that decision?
on a peremptory basis. They should.
Well, they were talking about how they didn't realize the scope, right, of this thing, the growth.
Well, you've got a
of it.
combination. You've got the overgrown forest. You've got the totally low humidity. And then you've got the winds blowing 50, 60 miles an hour. As I've said here before, those fires broke out no more than 24 hours after the state announced the no burn zones because they knew it was going to be low humidity and high winds.
Correct. We had the red flag warnings and all of that.
Yeah.
But I don't know what this specifically would have done if the fire was already 6 hours old, right? It looks like you can't. I don't know if cutting the power is how you take a fire out. That's not. The last time a fire was raging, like you don't pull the plug. It doesn't work that way. But yeah, maybe there was additional sparks that were flying in different directions because of the fire affecting the transformers and blowing other ones, perhaps later down the line, right? So it's possible additional spot fires could have occurred. And it might be some sort of maintenance.
They should have cut the power about 2 hours before
emergency.
the fire started, I believe.
Well,
just be safe.
Hindsight's obviously 20/20, right?
That's true.
I mean, if the fire never started, then these people were wondering where their power went, right? Why you keep cutting their power, right?
Well, they're gonna probably learn to err on the safe side.
It's to prevent you from melting in your car halfway between
thank
Chico
them
and Paradise.
You know what? If they rebuild Paradise and they start cutting people's power as a preemption, I guarantee you people will start calling saying, "Don't do that." So it's one of those things, right? You're not going to win it either way.
So what they say? You're protecting, got the overall good. You can exercise the authority to do that. I think as
you want your power cut, Mike?
Rather than burn up? Yeah, you bet.
How about the last 10 times they cut your power, you haven't burned? At this point, you're sick of them cutting your power, right?
No, I mean, really, people in those burn areas would learn to love a preemptory shut-off of their power, believe me.
And I couldn't say more than that. My name is Steve Appel. You're listening to Work Comp Matters. We're brought to you by A1 Law, Santa Monica Tickets, and ABC Rugs. We've got more news of the week concerning massive cyber breach at the Marriott Hotel, self-driving taxis. There's a new CEO or CFO at AIG. CHP officers stopped a Tesla car using autopilot. We gotta read
a great
that.
Story.
We gotta read that show. Houses burning faster than are being built. We've got super pot, super marijuana, okay, and Legionnaire's disease at Disneyland is back in the news. Next week on the show is going to be fantastic. Michael Burgess is coming in studio live on the 19th. The following week, I've got her penciled in, Ms. Kristen Chavez. Geraldine Lee, I'm going to interview her. She's the applicant attorney representing a lot of the injured workers in the the December 2015 holiday party in San Bernardino. And when we come back after the break, I'm going to talk about my lunch with Kristen Chavez. Right now, he's a regular contributor to the show, and he's hanging out in Munich, Germany, but he's still got his bar card. That's right, he's still a licensed applicant attorney in California with his regular segment on Work Comp Matters. Here is attorney Mr. John Scalia.
Hi, this is John with the Work Comp International report from Munich this week. Well, one of the two biggest news items on this side of the pond was the death of the ex-American President George Herbert Walker Bush. He died at 94, and he had quite a career of public service. George Herbert Walker Bush was born rich and privileged. He was a lifelong Republican. I always made a joke about the fact that I had nothing in common with these people. Whenever I would say this around my sons, they would laugh and say, "Right, Dad. That's why you went to one of the most exclusive prep schools west of the Mississippi, a top 100 college, and a top 20 law school. Don't tell us anymore." Okay, guilty as charged. However, let me read to you something, and it might explain why I have no problems having an affinity for somebody like George Herbert Walker Bush. I'm going to give a plug to my soon-to-be ebook, my autobiography, since we're in a capitalist country, and despite what some people on this program may think, I am a capitalist. It's my autobiography, and it's coming out soon. It will be available as an ebook. Anyway, Chapter 3 is titled, How a Poor Kid Ends Up Going to School with Richie Rich. I will read you some of it. I had gone to my 8th grade nun to ask for advice on going to high school, and she ranked the 3 Catholic high schools for me, told me one would quite simply be too easy, the other would not be so easy, but I really wouldn't have to work, and the third would be a challenge. So this is what I say about that. You might as well have been waving a red flag in front of the bull in the ring. What a great psych job. Tell me that something might be too intellectually rigorous, and what do you expect? Sister Paula knew exactly what to expect. I came home and told Mom I was going to St. Ignatius. No one told me, of course, that I would be competing with the sons of the privileged, that I was probably the only student there whose parents had not graduated high school, let alone college. Sister Paula was right. I didn't give a shit, and I would beat the sons of bitches at their own games. As it turned out, the sons of bitches were okay. I found a circle of friends there and was launched into writing, speaking, and thinking. So, back to George Herbert Walker Bush. Back then, being rich and privileged did not mean that you do not feel an obligation to be part of society. He enlisted in the U.S. Navy and became the youngest naval aviator at that time in American history. He got his wings just before his 19th birthday. He ended up flying approximately 50 missions over Japan, shot down once and rescued, and flew more missions. He received numerous decorations. After the war, he enrolled at Yale University, where he was captain of the baseball team and played first base. His nickname at Yale was Poppy. That may seem strange, but when you're 5 or 6 years older than your teammates in an undergraduate school, you look older to them. I remember one time when I was no more than Robert's age, playing in a public basketball court in a pickup game. Somebody had left me open, and one of my teammates said, "Throw the ball to Pops." What? Oh, wait a minute, that's me. So, yeah, I guess I do look like Pops to these guys. So that was his nickname. But Bush graduated Yale in 2.5 years, and he did well. He graduated Phi Beta Kappa with a degree in economics. For those of you who don't know, Phi Beta Kappa is the highest honor society in America. It's a 2-step process. First, your college or university has to be approved as a member, and only 10% of the universities in America are members. Secondly, you have to be one of the top students. Bush graduated Phi Beta Kappa. He went on to a distinguished career in public service, including elected office and appointed offices. He gave back to the society he was part of. He ended up his career by losing an election to Bill Clinton, a young upstart who became the president after him. Bush showed his class by leaving a letter for Clinton on the desk in the Oval Office. The letter said, "You will be our president when you read this note. I wish you well. I wish your family well. Your success is now our country's success. I am rooting hard for you. Good luck, George." That, ladies and gentlemen, is a definition of a class act. As his son said online after George died, he said he was a man of the highest moral character, and he was the greatest dad you could ever have. I hope that my sons are able to write the same eulogy for me. Anyway, that's the view from Munich this week.
And John, I thank you very much. I'll be back to talk about my lunch with Kristen Chavez after this musical break.
How does it feel to be one of the beautiful people? Now that you know who you are, what do you want to be? And have you traveled very far? Far as the eye can see. Baby, you're a rich man. Baby, you're a rich man too. You keep all your money in a big brown bag beside a zoo. What a thing to do. How does it feel to be one of the beautiful people? How often have you been there? Often enough to know. What did you see when you were there? Nothing that doesn't show. Baby, you're a rich man. Man too. You keep all your money in a big brown bag beside a zoo. What a thing to do. What do you
Glenn Laughlin and the Cherry Blue Storms on Work Comp Matters. If you like the show, if you don't like the show, if you want to comment on the show, if you like the story we read about Geraldine Lee, please give me a call at 818-357-4120. You can send me an email to wcexaminer@aol.com. You could be old school and send a fax, 818-475-1437. So I announced on the show 2 weeks ago that I had been informed that WorkComp Central was not going to renew the contract. As you know, about 2 years ago, I had a handshake with WorkComp Central to do a weekly 1-hour audio podcast having to do with essentially whatever I wanted to do. I had asked WorkComp Central if they wanted me to do straight news, if they wanted me to interview people in the industry, if they wanted me to interview people with WorkComp Central. They said, Steve, the show is yours. You run with it. Make it whatever you want. So we did it for a year. Then WorkComp Central decided to renew the contract, and we agreed for a second year. And I think, let's see, so far we've got 3 or 4 shows left. We missed one show last year, so we did 51 shows last year. We missed one show this year. We're going to do 51 shows this year. So far, this might be our 100th show. I'm not sure. But we will put about 102 shows into the tank. No sooner do I mention that they decided not to renew the contract than I get a call. And I said last week I got a call from a representative of WorkComp Central who I didn't remember ever speaking with her before. I've since learned that I might have met her in person like about 10 or 15 years ago when I originally started with WorkComp Central, when I did a couple of live seminars, which I think are still accessible online today. We did some lean seminars, and they were really fun and enjoyable. And little beknownst to me, when I was contacted by Ms. Kristen Chavez, that as of the middle of this year, she became the new president and CEO of WorkComp Central. Now, I didn't know this.
Good for her.
Good for her, yeah. And I didn't know this at the time when she contacted me, but of course I did some research. And I found out that Ms. Chavez started at WorkComp Central right about the same time I first did my seminars, and that's when I thought I may have seen her. She was like David DiPaolo's right-hand man or whatnot, right-hand woman, and she had been working at WorkComp Central for about 10 years or whatnot, and then she took off to take care of family. And then a couple of years ago, David DiPaolo passed away, and apparently WorkComp Central asked her to come back. And slowly but surely, she started doing different functions at WorkComp Central, and then was or became the CEO as well as the president. Well, I asked her to have lunch with me and talk about whether or not we could continue WorkComp Matters, and I'll speak a little bit about that. Now, the first thing I want to mention is I specifically, without question, black and white, no gray, said this would be my treat. So what happens when the bill comes? Within seconds, she grabs it and says, she basically said she wants to take care of it. I go, no, I asked you. She goes, please, let me. Okay, so that's number one. That's class, people. That is old school. Okay? Now, I'm not going to talk about specifically what was said, but I will tell you about the flavor of the 90-minute lunch. I fully agree with what she is trying to do. She is trying to make WorkComp Central arguably what it was. Not that it's not now what it was, but WorkComp Central, I will say I know this. They have lost some subscribers. They've lost a little bit of pull. But I think, and this is just my opinion, one of the reasons for that is because since Kristen Chavez has been CEO, or maybe a little bit before that, they've been reaching out past California. And I think Kristen wants to branch out considerably more and make this more of a national type work comp central. Now, of course, we here at Work Comp Matters, we concentrate mostly on California politics, California workers' compensation. But I think she has more of a national outlook, and I totally support that, absolutely without question. Now, I don't have the resources here at Work Comp Matters to go out nationally right now. I mean, yeah, we do a Trump story once in a while. We talk about the United States Senate. We'll talk about the United States House of Representatives. But mostly, we concentrate our stories on what's happening in the California legislature, California politics, California workers' compensation. Now, don't get me wrong. I am not opposed to going national, but we kind of need the resources to do that. And I'm very fortunate because right now I'm not counting on the money generated from Work Comp Matters, which, by the way, is very small. And I've said this before. I continue to do this show not to make money, but because I don't lose money. But in the same respect, someone could tweet us out, and I've said before, we could go viral and become the next Joe Rogan. Now, that being said, and I'm going to close with this, I am extremely proud of what we've achieved here at Work Comp Matters for the past 2 years, and I only look forward to improving the show into the next year. But I do not hesitate to say that in one way I have failed. And the reason why I have failed is because I have failed to generate the advertising not only to support the show, but to make the show profitable for Work Comp Central. And I want to put this promise out right now that if Work Comp Central and Kristen Chavez decide to renew the show for a third year, you have my word, you have my promise, you have my handshake while I look you directly in the eye that I will work considerably harder and more dedicated to dedicate and to generate more advertising for this show. So it not only pays for itself, but it actually puts us and Work Comp Central into the black. You have my word for that. And by the way, penciled in for the 19th is President and CEO of Work Comp Central, Kristen Chavez, here at the round table at Uncle's Studio. And that's all I have to say about that. If you like that, if you don't like that, if you want to comment, if you have a question, comment, or concern about what I've said now or anything that any of us have said on the show, give me a call at 818-357-4120. You can send an email to wcexaminer@aol.com. You can be old school. Send a fax, 818-475-1437. It's time to get back to more stories, and I think Robert has the next story about all of our favorites, ground beef.
Before biting into that medium rare burger, consumers are advised to check when and where the beef was packed. There's a national salmonella outbreak going on, and JBS SA plant in Tulsa, Arizona is now recalling about 12 million pounds of raw beef, including ground beef, according to U.S. Department of Agriculture. This expands an earlier recall of 6.9 million pounds in October.
You know, like with all these food safety issues, when they have these massive recalls, somebody's getting burned. It's got to be the actual company, right? You can't have insurance for this, can you?
I think they probably do have insurance for this one.
Business interruption insurance?
Yeah, salmonella for food packaging is rather a common risk. Yeah, it's a common risk, right? Yeah. So these are large risks.
Well, I think it depends who's getting insured, whether it's the meat packing company or whether it's the market that sells the meat. or whether
Well,
it's
this is the
maybe it's
manufacturer,
a
boss.
restaurant. Okay, so it's a manufacturer. Okay.
Manufacturing
this is the
defect,
manufacturer
essentially.
here. This is where it's wholesaled. It's where it's created, right? When the beef is ground.
Yeah, but what? Yeah, but
Manufactured.
what if I run a hamburger stand and all of the meat that I've been ordering all of a sudden I don't get?
Up and down the chain would have some liability, but the ultimate liability would be a product defect with the manufacturer.
Well, I'm
right?
talking about the business interruption insurance.
But you're talking about the people who are at the end of the supply chain who now have no product. Hopefully they can go to a competitor, right? There usually is a competitor waiting in the wings.
Costco.
Well,
But you know what? It
in
kills me.
America, there's always a competitor waiting in the wings.
It
I've
kills
noticed.
me.
Smart and final.
It kills me to throw away 12 million pounds of anything, right? I mean, that's so wasteful. It just seems awful. I mean, better than killing somebody, obviously.
How do you poison 12
You can't even give it to the
million
animals,
pounds of
right?
meat?
They'll
My
get the
goodness.
salmonella too. So you
Jesus.
can't do that.
Well, I think probably just a portion of it is infected, but they got to pull the whole thing because they don't have any control over where it came from.
Well, it's ground beef, so I mean it's just all mixed together, right? Right there at the factory line. If they show that it's unclean going into the system, that's it.
Doesn't it seem like we have a hell of a lot more of these than we used to?
Yes.
What does it mean?
Well, I think it kind of actually speaks to our culture a bit about where we're at, right? We don't
How
have
so?
those. We don't have as many manufacturing jobs in America anymore. These happen in the packing industry, right?
You know, I was just thinking, what if it has to do with the actual humanoids being laid off and jobs being taken by robotics?
Well, no, I think that's different. This is regarding cleanliness. This is probably human error here, right? I just think that perhaps with the loss of all the manufacturing
12
jobs,
billion pounds.
you get
is
less
human error.
qualified people.
12 million.
Million.
Million, sorry,
Million.
12 million pounds.
You just have less qualified people who are interested in this line of work nowadays, right? Back in the older days, you can say you can work at a factory and you could buy a house.
You could actually make a living at it.
Yeah, now that's a pipe dream, right? Because factory jobs are probably not paying that much, and
Blue
the
collar
idea,
jobs, yeah.
you can't live in a city, you can't live in a metro area, making factory living wages basically. Unless
no,
you're a plant owner.
no. That's not true. You can't live in Los Angeles City or New York City, but there are plenty of other cities in the United States that you can live in and make a decent wage.
But what we're saying is that factory positions would provide modest wages at most, and they're not even jobs that are available generally nowadays. So you have two things that are kind of unattractive for people who would be qualified. Jobs that are
But
antiquated
you only need a
and
modest
low
wage
wages.
to live in Montana or in North Dakota, right?
We call it poverty with a view. There aren't a lot of jobs up there.
Yeah, and we're talking about a salmonella outbreak, presumably because humans don't care, they're not motivated, they're not detail-oriented. These are common issues that we have as people, right? This is a human problem. Most cleanliness and bacterial infection stuff is, right?
Right.
So these are things that you have the power to change. You just have to pay attention to it. Problem is we don't have people looking for jobs like this, in my opinion. Do you know anybody who wants a manufacturing job? That's this young, smart go-getter who's going to work in the packing industry? No, it just doesn't happen. You get people who are looking for a job. And when you get that, you're going to get people who cut corners, who don't look at the details. It's hard to find good help these days.
I couldn't agree more. And speaking of good help, it's too soon for Marriott International to estimate the cost of the massive cyber breach that the company disclosed last week. And other companies that have suffered big attacks are imperfect proxies, said Chief Financial Officer Lenny Oberg in an investor conference recently. Any situation that you've seen from other companies, they are all highly individual, and no one should make an assumption about if it was this way for one company, it will be that way for another company, Oberg said at the Barclays Gaming and Lodging Conference, marking the first public comments by a top executive since the company disclosed the hack. You do expect there will be material costs associated with this.
Seems like there's more hacking going on, too. Am I wrong?
A lot of
Robert?
hacking going on.
Well, how did they say that this breach occurred? Do we know?
I have no idea.
No idea.
So it's a data breach, but
But I think it was like about 500,000 customers were breached. Is that right?
there's a lot of ways to obtain data, not necessarily from a hacker, right? You could have somebody
But
on the inside just copy and paste it onto a hard drive.
They were hacked, though. They admitted it.
Well, they admitted what? That there's a data breach
Yes.
and that somebody took the information.
Phone numbers, addresses, names, social security numbers, yes.
How did this hack occur is the question. We
They
don't
did.
really
Who
know.
knows?
They
This.
haven't
Exactly.
announced it, yeah.
Yeah, we
Right.
don't know if it's an outsider or an insider. A lot of these places have closed computer systems. So it's oftentimes you have to physically be at the location to copy the information, which means that could be somebody.
Sabotage?
I was going
Yeah.
to say, you think it's someone inside the Marriott Corporation?
Well, a lot of data breaches are internal, of course, right? Data leaks, you can call it. People will copy and paste the documents, the hard drive, and you can
Copy
take-
and paste?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, you copy and
Copy
paste.
and paste 500,000 clients?
That's nothing. 500,000 files, that's really quick, especially if you have a flash drive or something like that. You can do
Okay.
that pretty quick.
Okay.
I don't know the size of each file, but there's like those lightning cables for Apple, right? They can get through it. No problem.
Wow.
You have an external hard drive, like a terabyte of
Speaking
information?
of Apple, I hear
You get
that
it.
the iPhone 10s are the slowest selling iPhones ever to date.
Well, they haven't. I think they recently stopped disclosing their iPhone sales. That was news of the last quarter.
And of course, why do you stop disclosing? Because the sales suck. Okay.
Right.
First off, the phone was too expensive. They were advertising it at $1,000. Next, you normally have to wait about, Robert, now you'd know more about this than I would, about 2 generations of iPhones before you buy one. I mean, when an iPhone 8 first comes out, I'm buying the iPhone 6. Okay, when the 9 came out, I bought the 7, and I still have the 7, and I love my 7.
Okay, they're great phones. Some people buy the new one too. I got to tell you. And you need those people because otherwise you wouldn't have your 6 until there's an 8, okay?
Some people, but it is the slowest selling iPhone ever.
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons for that, but we'll see. Consumer confidence is highest it's ever been.
$1,000 a phone, yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, and there's competition from other phones that are really good.
And is Apple stock considerably down now? You would know this
Apple
too.
stock has dropped off a bit. It's under $1 trillion, well under $1 trillion.
Well, did it
now.
ever go over $1 trillion?
Yes, it did. We broke that news a while ago.
I know that Amazon went to $1 trillion.
Amazon is under $1 trillion as well.
Okay.
So they're both right now, as we speak, around low 800 billions, 815 for
Okay.
Amazon and 830
Wow,
for Apple.
that's like a 20% drop.
Yeah, there was a large sell-off. The stock market generally, if anybody's been watching, has been wild. Yeah,
Absolutely wild.
The fluctuations. It used to be years you would go 3% up, 3% down. Now it's days you'll go 4% up, 4% down. It's
you
just
gotta have
kinda-
ice water in your veins to play this market.
Well, you can pick the winners, in my opinion. Just go long term and just
I was
forget
gonna
about
say,
the day to day.
Forget about the short term. If you go for the long term, you will be fine.
But if you're looking at this short term, I mean, wow.
Oh,
Today,
yeah. Oh,
Amazon dropped 100 points. Yesterday, it went up 100 points. That's enormous.
Do you think the market is being manipulated somehow? Because there's people making money both ways.
I think
For
the market
sure, but
is
I don't know
always
who
being
can-
manipulated.
Who can time this market? It would be a Houdini, right? You can't. There's no one who can possibly be walking perfect steps with this market because every day it's different. You get 3 days in a row, enormous drops. 2 days, huge gains. The 2 huge gains will make up for the 3 drops.
Can I tell you guys about the Tesla car that the CHP guys stopped?
And then I want to talk about Alphabet Waymo. Go ahead. Go for it.
The California CHP says it may have used the autopilot system of a Tesla to stop the car after its driver fell asleep.
No, I remember hearing
Sorry
this,
for
please.
laughing.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Tell us more.
The CHP says officers attempted to stop the Tesla Model S, which was doing about 70 miles an hour on a highway early Friday in the San Francisco suburb of Redwood City. After the driver didn't respond to lights or sirens, the officers say they pulled alongside and realized he was asleep. They pulled in front and began slowing to a stop, hoping the Tesla driver's assist program was on and would do the same.
And fortunately, it was.
Authorities
Please
say
continue.
the tactic worked. The guy's name, apparently Alexander Samek, S-A-M-E-K, of Los Altos, was awakened and arrested on suspicion of DUI. Tesla hasn't confirmed whether the car was using autopilot.
Now, what they say is that for the autopilot to be engaged, that you have to have your hands on the wheel.
Really?
However, what they suspect is although he was passed out in a drunken stupor, somehow his hands were on the bottom of the wheel, which is why the autopilot continued to be engaged.
So it's just luck.
Or he glued his hands to the wheel. I don't know. Now, in a related story, Alphabet's Waymo on Wednesday, I guess that's today, launched a significant development in its costly decade-long quest for autonomous transportation, self-driving taxis that actually generate fares. With little fanfare, the company has begun charging passengers to use its driverless vehicles in a roughly 100-mile, that's 160-kilometer zone, in 4 Phoenix suburbs, Chandler, Tempe, Mesa, and Gilbert, where it has been testing its technology since 2016. So apparently, self-driving taxis are out and about. And by the way, Tempe, Arizona, that's where Arizona State is, right, Robert?
Yeah, it is.
And we will see what happens with that. And, of course, anything and everything that you would want us to talk about, be it in California workers' compensation or California politics. I want to thank you very much for listening. If you get a chance, please subscribe on YouTube. Or on the WorkCompMatters.net or .org channel. I forgot what it is, my Work Comp Matters channel. It's completely free. It's no obligation whatsoever. Coming up next week, he is inked, applicant attorney extraordinaire, Michael Burgess. Coming up on the 19th, she's penciled in. I'm going to give her a call after the show, see if I could ink her, President and CEO of WorkComp Central, Kristen Chavez. Also, coming up in a couple of weeks by interview, applicant attorney representing the injured workers at the December 2015 San Bernardino terrorist shooting, attorney Geraldine Lee. I want to thank my sponsors. I want to thank my sponsors, Santa Monica Tickets, ABC Rugs, and, of course, A1 Law. For my right-hand man, the chief of staff, keeping me in check and hopefully out of trouble at least 90% of the time, Dr. Mike Zyma. My protege, attorney Robert Ozeron. From Uncle Studios, Scott Walton on the board, taking care of all the technical difficulties. Back in Munich, Germany, John Scalia. And, of course, we haven't forgotten about all the good people back at WorkComp Central that continue to support and approve of what I think is this most valuable project, including, but not limited to, Kristen Chavez. My name is Steve Appel. We'll see you again next week with Michael Burgess in the house on another edition of WorkComp Matters.